Why, hello. We're back with part two of the pencil portrait drawing of Cassidy. And we're going to pick up where we left off. Here I'm darkening the hair, just trying to get some relationships between the dark, the dark of the hair and then the shadows of the skin. That's important because we want to measure how deep we need to go with our cast shadows in the face. Um, we'll see that, okay, so actually this is interesting. That's like a little eraser shield, and those things really work wonders when you are trying to get some averages and you're trying to readjust things. Um, you want to maybe lighten an area up, and sometimes those really get into like those little nooks and crannies. I mean, her face in this paint portrait is probably about, I would say, maybe 4 inches high, so she's rather small. Um, but you can see here I'm using a number HB pencil. Um, I believe it's a Staedtler, not sure. I'm going over, I'm accenting things, I'm readjusting. Again, as I mentioned in the first video on part one, that's what portrait drawing and painting is. It's adjusting and readjusting and not settling for the first marks that we make. Um, you'll find that you can actually come almost to the end of a painting and see something grossly wrong. And that's why we have to always look objectively, walk away from time to time when we're working on a drawing. Here I'm just adding more interest and accents underneath the eyes. She's got very large eyes, as you can see, and they large eyes usually have like an under. You have an eye, a top part of the eye, and then the bottom part, the eyelid, and then the bottom lid. So we have to work those in. It's just her characteristic, and we just don't want to overdo it. If, say, this was a portrait, a commission, you probably would want to go a little lighter on those. But since this is a study, it's an honest study, you want to get as dark and as full and true value as possible in your drawing. So don't be afraid. When we're doing a study, it's all out. Okay, so here I think I transitioned into another drawing. Actually, it's the same drawing, just a different time sequence. Again, starting to add some different patterns. Now, this is what I mentioned in part one, where I'm going to be going over the whole face. Now, this is actually, this is called, well, it's cross hatching, but it's actually vertical hatching. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to establish a little bit of shadows there. This, even though we're sped up a lot here, there's a lot. I think this is probably a good, I'd say, 2 hours of drawing in here. But don't worry, it's only 27 minutes long from beginning to end. So we're just adding more accents. Notice I do use my finger a lot. I know some people don't like doing that in drawing. I really don't like that static feel and look, you know, when it's a little fuzzy, when you see the pencil marks. What I like to do is I like to start with a darker, like a 4B in the shadow areas, and then start lightening up on my pencil. And what happens is as we do that, okay, so we did transition into another break. Um, but as far as the pencil is concerned, okay, and my procedure, and this is pretty much the procedure of most artists who work in graphite when they're doing portraits, or just, well, any kind of drawing, is that you start off when you establish your dark, you start with a darker pencil. Um, Oh, and that's, mind you, that's after a very light tone is put down, just to kind of indicate the shadow shapes. Um, what I'm doing right now, as you can see, I'm right around her chin. I'm just trying to get the core shadow. It's not necessarily the end of her chin. It's just where the core shadow starts. You are going to see a little reflective light as we build up on this. You'll start to see more and more um, the shadows across the entire face getting a lot darker, but in slight gradients. Again, like I said earlier, it's constant adjustment. Um, that's what portraiture is like. I usually, if I'm working from a photograph, I'll turn the photo upside down every once in a while. Unfortunately, for this video, I had to keep it in one fixed position, so I wasn't able to do that here. But how you can get around that is just use a mirror. Put the mirror up towards your eyes, or look at it from, turn your back to the picture and look over your shoulder, just as you would if you were drawing somebody from life. And yeah, this whole procedure too, it's exactly how I would work if I was drawing from life. Um, exact same positioning. I would there would be really nothing different um, in approaches to both. Um, is working from life better? Absolutely. Whenever you can, draw from life. Make sure you have a model that's available. Sometimes these pencil drawings can take quite a while. Well, just like a painting could. It's a process. Um, I just put that piece of paper down just so I can go over and darken some of that hair without smudging anything with the palm of my hand. Again, adding more halftones as I move along. And here you'll see that I'm accenting these areas just a little bit more. Okay, I'm really trying to get that feeling of the mouth turning down there, and of course the chin. And always look at the shapes too that the forms create. The shadows, the halftones. Her whole face is almost, planing downward around from her cheeks. She does have a rather wide face, rounded head, so we have to make sure that we get that characteristic. It's very important. Now here I'm going around with a sable brush. Now the reason for this is exactly this would be equivalent to using my finger. However, using the brush gives us these really super subtle transitions, and it really softens the picture up. Try not to use it too much. It's really just to kind of break down the static as much as possible, but without taking too much of the graphite up, because that could be an issue as well. You can actually be lifting paint off, almost basically like a broom would be sweeping. You might be sweeping particles of maybe a 4B or a 6B pencil that really hasn't attached itself all that well to the paper. So be mindful of that. I just kind of use it in the halftone areas and some of the shadows, um, like around her cheek. Now there's going to be some things. There's like a little mark right under the ear, I think. Yes, and I'll resolve that ear, that little piece there, a little bit later. Now I'm going back. I'm starting to rework the jawline on the right side, um, looking more and more for accents, creating the core shadow, trying to get that to be worked out as best as I can. Um, and still redefining the shadow shapes, getting those a little darker under the head on the neck. Um, you'll see I'll be going back and forth all over. The thing is, like, you want to look at the head as a whole. So if you fixate on one spot, um, well, it's going to be a little uh, unbalanced. So you want to try to keep moving around from different spot to spot. When you see something that needs to be addressed, um, try to get to it as soon as possible, as soon as you see it. And here's the eraser shield. I'll probably have to go back and kind of reshape those lips. I can see already that they might need a little bit more fine tuning. So, and again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's a process. It's back and forth numerous times, um, until we get it just the way we want it. Also, if you notice I don't know, I think there's some video. I don't know if it's here or in the next clip. You're going to actually see me whittle that pencil. I did it just under the, my cell phone video. And the reason why I like seeing that was probably about I'd say an inch and a quarter, if not more, probably an inch and a half of exposed graphite, um, sharpened to a very, very fine, almost like a pinpoint. The reason for this, again, is this reduces, if we're trying to do these very soft, gradated studies, the thinner and the sharper the pencil, the finer the line, obviously. It's just an all around, it's a preference. Some people like, they like to see a rough drawing. They like to see the pencil strokes, and that's great. But if we're trying to do something where we're doing sort of like um, a preparatory drawing for possible painting, or just a very rendered, well conceived pencil portrait, then yeah, we're gonna try to get the best and the softest gradients we possibly can get. Um, I love seeing the Ang drawings. He was an amazing draftsman, but he was also like he stylized too. I think because of his style, the impressionists actually loved him because he did things to the form that wasn't so. It was still beautifully rendered and academic in every sense of the word, but there were things that he did and changes in his art that sort of elevated his style into something quite unique, but yet his pencil drawings are just so perfect, um, in every way. And if you want to study good portrait drawing, uh, always look to Dominique Ang's. Really good stuff there, and you can see that his portraits were Um, Again, prerequisites, preliminaries, studies for, and sometimes he'll just get a feeling of the model. Um, his ability to translate form was so acute that he he was able to just bridge every uh, possible um, portrait that came uh, his way. Just amazing. And these are things that we really have to study. Also Bouguereau, but Bouguereau, you rarely see much of his preliminary drawings. He really went right into paint. Um, but but the few drawings that remain. Okay, here, uh, this is it. This is the whittling of the pencil. Um, this is actually a 3H, believe it or not. And the reason why I'm doing this is the same reason that I described before, is that as we're drawing, we want to sort of burnish the surface now with this harder pencil. And I can go in and I can get these very, very, very fine gradients with this pencil now. That's what a 2H pencil is actually used for. A lot of my students ask me, well, how come you never ask me to use, or when can I use my 3H pencils? And it's normally when they buy a set, what'll happen is, oh, they're looking at all these different pencils, and they'll see a 2H and a 4H and possibly some sets have 6H pencils. And I usually tell them, I said, first of all, don't use those as pencils that you're going to start your drawing. They're usually finishing pencils. And what I mean by that is that they are perfect for creating very, 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 very light and subtle value shifts. Um, when you don't, when you can't use a 2B or a HB even, that's what you really go for, and you can get those slight gradients. And we're by no means done with this portrait. We still have to get more curvature in the cheeks. Um, it's still looking a little flat there, um, and you'll see as it evolves, it will get rounder and softer. Now I'm not looking for photographic realism here. I'm just trying to get a good sense of light and dark, um, and an overall likeness of the sitter as well. Now she has very unique cheeks. Her cheekbones are quite low. Um, I mean, they actually start high, but they seem to bridge a little lower on the face. Um, so these are little characteristics that we have to pick up on. Now here, right under the mouth, you'll see there's a lot of form, a lot of things happening in there. Okay, and and we have to address it. I did fix that little blemish that was over by the ear. Um, Probably just exactly like I'm doing there, is just picking out those little embellishments, okay, with an eraser, and it's akin to doing painting reparation or repair, where you're just working in these little tiny isolated areas. Well, as you're drawing, you have to think in those terms. Well, I got to make a grade, which is like a flat surface area. Um, but there's all these little nooks and crannies and things happening and texture that you don't want. Yeah, you got to go in there and you have to work in between those lights and all those textured areas, and just even them out that way. That's what drawing is. It's we're trying to create the illusion of three dimension just with a pencil. Um, And with graphite, it's a little challenging because, well, in a sense, it's challenging because we have to change our pencils quite often. That's a major uh, starting point for drawing portraits. Is you gotta have those pencils. You have to have the 6B, you have to have the 4B, you have to have the 2B, you have to have the HB, and you have to have the H pencils too. Um, they all work together, and you have to know when to shift. So in this drawing, as I said earlier, I basically start maybe with the 4B. I didn't use the 6B so much. I think I stayed with the 4B on her hair, which are the darker parts, and around the eyes. Okay, and now we shift into the last. We're coming down to the last few minutes here, and you can see I got a little darker. I'm trying to soften those areas in. You can see she's starting to modulate a little bit more. Of course, I got to go darker with the hair. Probably even probably go back over there. And at some point, I'll start moving some of that hair over on the right side and getting some more form there. There I use my sleeve, my shirt, the sleeve of my shirt to make a little adjustment there. And here I broke out the old Q-tip. Now, why am I not using the cotillion or those stumpy things? Well, first of all, they're way too hard. They drive the graphite in too fast, too deep, and they stain the paper. So I would rather just buy a box of, go to the dollar store and get a box of Q-tips. Okay, I think we're coming to the end. Yeah, so I'm just restating some of the darks in the eyes, in the eye area, poking out, getting a little bit of the light out from the bottom lids, and just massing in, starting to get some of that tone in her hair. I'm looking at the style, the movement of the hair. This is going to take a while, but it again, like everything else, it'll be a process. So hope to see you soon. Stay tuned for part 3 of Cassidy.